here behind me. She's just taking a little screenshot there. As you can see, I'm in my, excuse me, DC office. These are all my family behind me. I hope I get to see them for Christmas, which I think I will. But I do want to thank you for putting us together. This is such an important issue. I really want to hear your perspective. So I'm just going to give just a little lead in and have everybody sort of introduce themselves. And then I think Pastor Brokey's going to say a few words and then open it up. We don't have to listen to me talk all day, that's for sure. So it's nice to see you all. As you know, there is a bill moving through the Senate right now. It's called Build Back Better. I have other names for it, but I won't get political, at least in that sense. And part of it is a pre-K childcare portion. And you all are in this business. It's more than a business. This business of caring for children and helping working parents and helping our children develop and grow. And as a mother myself and a grandmother now of 7, we have certainly when my kids were growing up, they went to the Presbyterian and Baptist preschools and pre-K. And then I have a little grandson in the Catholic pre-K right now. So, faith-based childcare has been a big part of our lives in West Virginia. And I think it's over 53% nationwide. Yeah. Well, when this bill has come over from the House of Representatives, it has a whole section in there to try to meet the cost of childcare. But in reality, what it's going to do is it's going to almost double the cost of childcare. Some of the provisions in there in terms of wage requirements, in terms of certifications and buildings and all of these things are going to really hike the cost of what is already very difficult for some families to meet. It also is very discriminatory in terms of where the federal dollars can go that are provided in this bill. And faith-based organizations are going to be very disadvantaged here, if not shut out from all availabilities of federal funds to upgrade facilities, to make your own choices in hiring. It's a fight we have all the time here. And I think could really end up, that's what I want to hear. What kind of impacts do you think that will have on your schools and your ability to serve our West Virginia families? And there are other things in there that it's tipped way heavily towards Head Start and other government programs that are existing. And so it doesn't get talked about a lot, but I think it's worrisome, especially for a state like ours, where we're trying to deliver a great product in rural America and sometimes in a lot of financially challenged households. So I thank you for what you do every day. I should have started with that and taking care of all those. I don't know how you do it. That's an energizing job, I can tell you that. Anytime I babysit for any of our grandchildren, I have to take a 3-hour nap after they leave. I forget how exhausting it is. So I'll turn it over to the pastor, and then maybe we could get everybody to introduce and just open it up. Thank you.
Great. So I'm Dan Brocky. I'm the Executive Director of West Virginia Christian Education Association. So work with a number of schools across the state and also with ACSI schools as well. And appreciate these folks taking time to join us today. So I'll let them introduce themselves, and then I'll give just some brief thoughts from the association.
Okay. Tanya, why don't you start? Or go ahead, Steve. I know Steve, yeah.
Hi, Senator. How are you?
Hey, good.
Merry Christmas to you and your family.
Thank you.
I'm here with, I'm Steve Corbin, Executive Director of Operations for Bible Center Church. We're based in Charleston. And I have with me our preschool director, Jane Jackson.
Hello, good morning.
Good morning, Jane.
Well, good morning, everyone. I'm Tanya Neal, and I direct the underschool age preschool and infants and toddlers for Tays Valley Child Development Center. That's also sponsored by the same church as Tays Valley Christian School.
Hello, I'm Julia Skaggs. I am the director at Grace Christian. I also teach the K-4 class, and this is Kathleen Johnson. She is the assistant director and also the co-teacher in the K-4 class.
My name is Kathy Schaefer. Good morning. And I
Morning.
serve as the elementary principal at Grace Christian School until Friday when I retire.
Oh, what?
Congratulations.
Yeah, she has done a fantastic job at Grace. Senator, I was really delighted to hear some of your thoughts regarding this. Obviously, even the fact that your family has utilized faith-based daycares. We realize that the mixed delivery system of daycares has been working well, and really, obviously, as Christians, we feel like God gives stewardship of children to parents, and your children now, as they're choosing daycares, should have options available that meet the needs of their family. And as you've mentioned, some of these things would be such a detriment to faith-based daycare systems as far as first of all, with funding, if it had to go through Head Start, of course, that would just eliminate religious providers. But also the fact, you look at choice coming into education for elementary and secondary, and we're excited about the Hope Scholarship in West Virginia, but basically just empowering parents to make choices. The same way that funding is available in college, the money goes to students, they get to choose, and we would like, if funding was going to be made available, for that funding to go to parents to enable them to make the choice that best fits their needs, and even as we look at, the government, educational systems, different things, this would put parents in a position where they would have to rely upon the government's idea of how a child should be educated and the training that they get. So we are just diametrically opposed, think it's a bad bill, think it would definitely hurt the faith-based daycares in West Virginia. And so those are just some thoughts, to get started. But I think that I really appreciated your view and insights into the program, because I do think that it will be very detrimental. We'll force some of our daycare providers out of existence. So those are just some initial thoughts.
Well, thank you. Does anybody want to add to that, or tell me what impacts that might have on your families and your students, and as much as you know about what's pending?
I think at the end of the day, childcare a lot of times does come down to cost for a family.
Absolutely.
How much is it going to cost? And if you have a non-faith-based daycare that is essentially being subsidized, it's going to lower their overhead. And eventually, between the licensing requirements, the wage requirements, et cetera, what it's going to end up doing is it's going to keep their costs high. It's going to allow the non-faith-based to keep their cost low. And eventually the outcome is going to be the faith-based daycares are going to become a very small or non-existent player in that marketplace. That's a synopsis of the business perspective.
Well, I mean, I think you bring up a good point there, Steve, in that if you have a couple that's are making a certain amount of money and they go over the subsidization level, I mean, where they're allowed to get subsidization for their care, those folks are, the predictions are like $24,000, $30,000 a year per child. If the schools have to meet and match some of these requirements that are baked into the bill. And so you're right, it will disadvantage the schools and their ability, but also those families that are sort of right there, they're going to be, I don't know, they're going to have to make choices as to whether one works or not, all the kinds of things that I think make it difficult for families.
I'll give
That's
you a
just
good
one
example.
aspect. Yeah.
I'm sorry, I'll give you a good example of what happened when the initial COVID legislation was passed to the federal government. And I had dialogue
Right.
with your office about
Right.
this. There were food cards that were given to families whose children were enrolled in schools that were in the national lunch program.
Right.
What happened is most of the faith-based schools are not in that program because of the regulations. You can't afford to be in it because you have to hire dietitians and et cetera, et cetera. So we're not part of it. So the families that were currently enrolled in private faith-based schools or just private schools in general that weren't part of the National School Lunch Program lost out on the $300. I think it ended up being $600 per student. I think you're going to end up with the same type of,
You're right.
to a much larger scale. You're going to have the same type of consequence occurring.
Excuse me, Senator Capito, one of the concerns that I was wondering about is the regulation. If they're going to regulate licensing and wage requirements, would this bill also regulate hiring practices and qualifications for teachers? Yeah, see, that's a concern that we would have.
I don't know that we do this every year, but I have voted on this numerous times, and I'm going to look over here at Dana to make sure I'm phrasing it correctly, but there's always a movement to try to force religious-based hiring to be so that you couldn't make preference for somebody that was maybe in your church or something of that. And I can't remember what they call it, but we make this vote all the time and it loses. We preserve the right for you to make those decisions. But it's getting narrower and narrower. And in this bill, you would not be able to make those. They take down that 30-year prohibition of us being able to say that you can't discriminate for religious purposes, and it takes away that 30-year precedent. So you're right, you would lose control on that.
Yeah.
How can we defeat this bill?
Well, that's part of what I'm trying to do. There's lots of us trying. There's all kinds of other aspects of this bill that I don't like, and you've probably heard some of that publicly. It's too big, it's too much money, it's going to cost $5 trillion. It's taxes, it's the IRS coming to. Here's another thing I would worry about as individual. It's 80,000 new tax auditors to come supposedly, get rid of tax fraud. But the statistics show that basically it would end up affecting mostly people who make under $300,000 a year. Supposedly they're going after the millionaires and billionaires, but I actually saw Elon Musk say the other day, he goes, I got so many auditors coming after me, because of his billions. It's just going to trickle down to folks that in small businesses that are going to be punitive. They're going to spend thousands of dollars trying to defend themselves. So that's just one aspect of it. But this one I think is troubling because I don't know if you all have the statistics. Like, what are the statistics for West Virginia in terms of numbers of children that are in a preschool or daycare that is religious, that is faith-based? Does anybody know? I know nationally it's 53. I don't know what it is in West Virginia.
I had heard 50%, but I didn't have documentation on that.
That's what I was going to say, Dr. Brocky. I was actually reading up on this last night, and it was about 50% what I read online, if what I read online was true. And that was from liberal and conservative perspectives. I do have a question, though, to follow up with Kathy. If currently at Grace Christian, we do not accept any money from the government for our program, how will this bill affect that? Because of that, we can teach Bible anytime, the food program's already been mentioned, that sort of stuff. How will this bill affect that? If we continue to not accept money, will we keep the freedoms that we have, or is there some loophole in there where we're going to get caught up in something?
I think it's kind of what Steve said. You would probably be able to operate, outside of the boundaries of the organizations that are subsidized by the government. But from a competitive standpoint, if I can take my child up to Holtz Elementary and pay nothing, or come down to First Presbyterian or whatever and pay, whatever the going rate is, families are going to have to make decisions like that. Now, the curriculum is, you have to, if you became a part of this program, you would have to follow the curriculum that is set up by national standards. And I would imagine at some point that becomes a big problem.
So I have a
Absolutely.
question.
Uh-huh.
So years ago, when West Virginia first mandated preschool for 4-year-olds,
Right.
they tried to form a partnership. They found out they didn't have enough room in their schools for that. So they
Right.
tried to form a partnership with faith-based schools that already had these preschool programs. And it was the same thing. They were 4-day programs, and they said we could teach our religion on the 5th day. But we would have to do the state mandated curriculum. So, we didn't opt for that at all. So if this bill passes, we have no options. Is that correct?
I would think you would not have options if you would take any of the subsidization. I think you would be able to still operate. I don't think that, but you would be operating outside of the boundaries. For instance, the program states that it has to be at least a 6-hour day, school year program, and you must provide transportation. There's another cost right there.
Yes.
And then here's another kicker. I know Tanya's like, whoa. And here's another kicker on this that I don't think I haven't even talked to the governor about this, but in FY27, so it starts out where the government, this is so typical the way programs get started. The federal government takes the full cost. So it's no cost in the beginning. Then as it moves up by fiscal year 27, the state of West Virginia is going to have to bear 38% of the cost of this. So you're going to have national standards that the state's going to have to do. Now we know our state has pre-K, so they've already they're devoting state resources, so it wouldn't impact us probably as much as some of the other states who don't have pre-K. But it's a big onus. And then, to think that you must have a living wage and benefits that links staff pay to union negotiated public school employee wages.
Yes. Yeah.
That's got to be difficult too.
I know a number of our daycares have told me it's already difficult to get staffing because of even all the benefits for people not working, and then the rising hourly rates in the community, but then also the extra requirements involving college classes and different things for daycare workers. So all of this would escalate that exponentially, probably.
Yes. Yeah.
Here's where I'll jump in.
Yeah.
Since we have a staff of about 50, I'll go all the way back to 2012 and just give a real quick synopsis of how we managed to go from a program that had 90 some 4-year-olds at that time to probably dwindle down from the free alternative. Now we only have probably 1 or 2 classes, so about 30. What we did was go towards infant and toddlers. That was when we opened our infant and toddler program back then, not like 9 years ago. And so we saw that our Christian views and basis and perspective would not align with the pre-K collaborative programming. And even though, we were more than invited to be at the table, we felt like we had a vision and mission that was obviously different than saving Bible for after the 6 hours, or the Friday. So we did not partner with that, but we have always accepted Title 20. So we are CACFP. We do the food program. We do accept the subsidy for assist. That's always been income based, right? So that's my first point, is usually in this conversation, raise the level of living, the minimum, raise the bar for the people that need it. So that income level where they're just missing it, they can still afford to give their choice of where they want to spend their certificate. Okay, so fast forward to now, in the last 2 years with essential certificates, we're still back up to our numbers from pre-COVID. We have, it's like 13 classrooms now, from infants all the way to pre-K. And those certificates are everything. It's a huge amount of funding. It's like the best and the worst all wrapped up in one, because I know where the money comes, so says the control of what's going to happen there.
Right.
So my teach sheet is like, this sounds great. And we're, we know the cost is high. I'm all about the staff having better wages. We gave our staff $2 wages increases from September just to retain what we had and bring on and be able to incentivize bringing on more. So there's parts of that I like, but then the other parts of, again, giving up our identity and vision and mission is obviously not been something that we've agreed thus far. So even with subsidy and all that support, we're still able, to because we're at a high level of support because of the quality. So I was being encouraged to get credited through ACSI and all these other entities, which are wonderful and perfect for Christian schools. But I could see down the road, West Virginia's put tier in place. Let's do quality enhancement. So we tie our curriculum to the West Virginia Early Learning Standards Framework. We follow all of their components because that's what quality in an early childhood setting looks like, with Jesus and Bible, and still add our little bit of a Becca and a few things additives to meeting their qualifications, and then still able to keep our identity.
So the
voucher thing is really helps. It feels like, give them a little choice.
Yeah. So the food issue that Steve was talking about, you all have those qualifications, so you were able to get that. Is that what you're talking about? I can't hear you. You hit your mute. I can't. Go ahead. Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know anything about the cards. I'm not sure. I just know the child and adult care food program wasn't real helpful at first. They weren't giving us any added incentives, or they were just reimbursing for meeting the nutritional guidelines for the meals and snacks served. So families never received outside supports for us, because I'm not from the school age side. So I'm under school age, where they use it really in the program, and we were open the entire time unless we had to close.
Let me ask you this question. Let's just say that Teays Valley would not be able to survive because of either the competitive issue or the fact that, let's just say that you had to close your doors. Where would those children go? I mean, what would happen to families? I mean, I think that's something that we don't really consider, what your alternatives are in certain areas. I mean, the public schools are not going to handle this. I don't think. They have a certain amount of slots, and I think they fill the slots, but I don't know. Do you have a perspective on that, Tanya?
Let's just say there's a few options and they do not have quality. We're probably the only tier 2 rated center, one of the few in Putnam County. We were definitely the first, and we may be the only one in Putnam County even meeting that quality accreditation through the state. So they're very small, they're, private, or, not at all very well, let's say, preferred or respected.
Does anybody else have a perspective on that?
Kathleen Johnson here comes from a tier 3 daycare, and she has expressed to me that should this pass, she doesn't understand what the plan is to do with these children. Have they even discussed this? Going through this bill, what is the plan should the faith-based programs close? She was talking about the tier 3 she came from, and jump in. I don't want to talk for you, but you can jump in.
Like Cabell and Wayne County, the daycares that I worked with, both of their pre-K lists, the waiting list is, they fill up in the summer, and their kids still just continuing just to wait on that waiting list. And that's 4-year-olds alone.
Have they discussed a plan? Should this pass, what's the next step if faith-based have to close because of this?
Well, I think the vision is that Head Start would probably, and there's been some, I think, collaborative, and I don't know the depth of this, but some collaboration between Head Start and the pre-K program in West Virginia. But, these are different models. There's been a lot of criticism of Head Start. They've gotten a lot of money over the years. I'm not, I'm not somebody that can go in and grade a daycare facility, but let's face it, they've had a lot of problems. And I think that they've tried to bring their professionalism up, but they have a different mission, and they have had a different mission. And so, that's one of the things that they tout, and it would also be, more money into the public schools. But these things don't come out of thin air. If you're going to load a couple hundred students or, pre-K or even younger into a public school, do they have the facilities for that?
Right.
It doesn't happen overnight. And so for some reason, if we were to take a poll in West Virginia and say to younger families, say, and you're going to get subsidized and you're going to have free childcare for your child as you work, that's very, very popular. I mean, people would say, that's great, I want to do that. Everybody loves free, and of course everybody likes to be able to access that. But the devil is in the details. Okay, what's your choice? Well, you got to put your kid on your 3-year-old on a bus for 45 minutes to get to the facility. Maybe you're a member of Grace and you want your child to be there because that's what and it's a community. Nope, can't do that because I got to pay an extra $13,000 a year. So it goes back to what Pastor Brokey was saying, and that is, and I think I'm saying your last name wrong. Is it Brokey or?
It's Brocky.
Brocky. I'm sorry. Well,
Yeah,
as somebody
you're
named
fine.
Capito, Capito,
I understand.
it just eliminates your choice for your families. And then where are you? People either don't make the choice, or you end up having bad choices. Like Tanya said, you end up in substandard positions. And is that an enhancement to the family and an enrichment to that child and get them off on the right foot? But I don't want to keep, I guess we'll wrap up here. I don't want to keep you, but this is so helpful to me. And we're going to be doing a press conference, a national press conference here in the next several hours, talking about this very issue, because we all hear about the IRS agents coming or the Green New Deal coming, but you don't hear what is envisioning for our children. And, just to speak politically for a second here, if you look at the governor's race here in Virginia, we had the new governor that was elected, Youngkin. He's not in yet, but he was the governor-elect. And he talked about how he won in Virginia. He's a Republican, he wins in a blue state. But the bottom line for him was parents feel like their choices are getting so narrowed. They can't go to a public school board meeting and speak up.
Yeah.
They have to get in line. They have to stand outside. They can only speak for a minute. And if they get emotional, they get arrested. And so parents are feeling so, and after a year and a half of watching their kid try to learn on a computer or trying to figure out how we're going to do this, and they've realized what their child's not learning, how difficult it is, all these kinds of things. So I think that there's a real frustration with parents, and I think there would really be. That's why we wanted to highlight this, because we're trying to take this bill down in the whole, but this is one of the aspects of it that I think would be particularly is kind of hidden. And I think we need to talk about it. So does anybody have any closing comments?
Senator Capito, I'd just like to mention two things. One, you said the devil's in the details. A lot of this, we can pass the legislation, but a lot of this is in the rulemaking body too.
Right.
Who makes the rules? And as administrations change and cabinet secretaries change, these rules could change every 4 years. Right. I think that's something to remember. And the other thing I'd like to say maybe from a macro level, I feel like from a faith-based organization, it's not only the children that are affected today, but a lot of these preschools are feeders into private Christian schools. And if we remove the first gateway, it ultimately, and I don't want to be doom and gloom, but ultimately I think it starts to erode the private faith-based K through 12 schools that are in existence. And so I think it's not just the immediate, but I think there's certainly a long-term effect that at some point would probably need to be considered. But thank you for taking your time on
Excellent.
this today.
Yeah, thank you.
Two excellent points. And, you know, the cynic in me might say that might be part of the reason that they're moving in this direction.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Yep.
well, everybody have a great Christmas and thank you.
You too.
Well,
Thank you for what you're
Thank
doing
you,
for us.
Senator.
Thanks for putting this together.
Yep.
All righty.
Appreciate
Bye-bye.
it.
Bye.
Bye now.